Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Chief Petty Officer Michael Baruch. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. We warmly welcome Mr. Peter Kane, Member for Ginninderra, ACT Legislative Assembly. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Please sit if you can do so. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the hearts of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Augustus John Elliott. Augustus Elliott was born in Newport, South Wales on the 20th December 1875. He came to Australia with his parents at the age of 7, settling in Adelaide. He was educated at Hindmarsh Public School and went on to become a tailor. After his apprenticeship within Adelaide, Augustus went to Sydney, where he worked for 7 years before returning to Adelaide. Augustus had made friends with a girl named Edith Roberts on the voyage from the United Kingdom to Australia when he was a child, and they remained friends as their families settled in Adelaide. Their friendship blossomed into romance, and on the 25th of November 1899, the two were married in North Adelaide by the Reverend Thomas Hope. They settled in Mead Street, Largs Bay, and would go on to have 2 children, a daughter Eunice and a son Gwen. Augustus Elliott enlisted into the Australian Imperial Force at Melbourne in February 1915. He was posted to the newly formed 22nd Battalion and, after completing his initial training in Australia, left for active service overseas in May 1915. The 22nd Battalion was the first sent to Egypt, where he continued his training in the desert. It did not deploy to Gallipoli until the early September 1915, taking over portions of the front line from the 2nd Brigade. By the time the 22nd Battalion had arrived on Gallipoli, the major offences were over, and its role was largely defensive as the decision was made to evacuate. Nevertheless, the Gallipoli Peninsula remained a very dangerous place to be. On the 18th of September, a day of no particular note according to the 22nd Battalion's war diary, the men of the 22nd Battalion came under an enemy artillery bombardment. At some point during the bombardment, Private Augustus Elliott was struck and killed. Edith Elliott received a number of letters in Adelaide from men serving at the front line in relation to her husband's death. Lieutenant J.C. McCall wrote, expressing sorrow at the loss of so fine a soldier. Chaplain Thomas Bennett, who was not far from Elliott when he was killed, wrote, we all who knew him value him for his sterling good, many qualities, and his mates feel their loss severely. It was my sad duty to bury him tonight in Shrapnel Gully Cemetery with others who today gave up their lives fighting for their king and country. They died as heroes, these dear fellows. One's heart almost breaks with sadness of it all. May God bless, comfort, and strengthen you in your hour of sorrow is my earnest prayer. Today, Augustus Elliott remains lie buried in Shrapnel Valley Cemetery with no epitaph. He was 39 years old. His name is listed on the honour roll on my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Augustus John Elliott, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We particularly appreciate your visit despite the challenges posed by COVID and wish you all a very pleasant evening.